Hi guys, so a little preliminary review here. I haven't used these in combat yet, but these are the new gloves from Red Dragon. That is the mark of the HEMA Shop, a UK based HEMA supplier specialists, and they're developing lots of equipment for HEMA, and these of course are pretty important. They retail at £50 in the UK, or with a club discount it's around £45, which for those of you who've tried to buy HEMA gloves will know is a very competitive price. Most other gloves that you can compare with these gloves are in fact in the sort of £100–120 range. Okay, so these are really leading the way in mass-produced, really good protective gloves. So what have they got going for them? Well, they're essentially quite similar to some of the better types of lacrosse gloves that have been used in previous years and that have now gone out of manufacture. The first thing that you might or hopefully notice is overlapping lames on the fingers. So underneath here we don't only have padding like cheap lacrosse gloves do, we have a hard impact resistant plastic plate with a little bit of padding underneath it, so then although they might look quite bulky, for me at least they don't feel bulky. I have worn some hockey and lacrosse gloves that they make you feel like Hellboy, like you've got a huge great brick on your hand. These do not feel like that. These are the 13-inch size, in fact, which I think are the only size available right at the moment, but 13 inch is the standard size for most guys. But in fact my wife has been wearing a pair of these, and she's a fairly tall female, she's 5'10", but she can use these comfortably as well. So they're not overly massive, they've got really good grip, and quite nimble, very light, incredibly light. So let's go through the protection. So we have, as I mentioned, everything that you can see has basically got hard plates in it, with the even the wrist has actually. So let's go through piece by piece. So overlapping hard plates on the fingers, and in fact underneath each finger there's an extending part, so you can't even get anything in there. Even when the finger's fully bent, there's still a plate underneath to protect your finger and joint. Okay, so overlapping plates all the way up the fingers. You have padded on the side on the upper finger and bottom, a little finger and an index finger on the outside there. Okay, so you've got padding there. Overlapping plates on all the fingers, of course. You have hard, some type of high impact resistive plastic on the knuckles. Then you've got back of the hand, there's a hard plate in there with padding underneath it. Again, it's articulated, but you've got hard plates underneath these with padding underneath. You've got the same overlapping plates on the thumb as you do on the fingers, but these are wider. And I should also mention that the end of the fingers are rolled around, so they do protect the tips of the fingers to some extent. Now, on that subject I should add that you can buy separately to these, you can buy spares sort of fingertip protectors that are like little rubber cups. And you can buy them from the HEMA Shop, and they slip inside these gloves very easily. I was actually skeptical about how comfortable those little cups would be inside the glove, and whether they would worsen the grip, and whether they would keep maybe turning inside the finger, coming off the finger and turning around and things like this. In actual fact, I tried them at an event not long ago, and I was really surprised. You don't really feel them being there, because you have, at least unless you've got freakishly long fingers, because you have a bit of extra length in here than you actually need. The cups tend to sit at the end, so in actual fact they don't really sit on your fingers that much at all. You don't really feel them. They're not really that much in contact with your fingers until a hit comes in, and of course they disperse the force because they are a hard cup. So I'd highly recommend, especially for longsword, maybe you don't need it so much for sabre, but especially for longsword where sometimes the tips of the fingers get hit, getting those rubber protectors in there as well. Also to mention that I think is a nice detail is the inside of the wrist here. Usually this this toggle is all you have on this type of glove, but this has a Velcro overlapping flap. Both flaps are padded, protecting the inside of your wrist. I actually find you don't need to do that toggle up, which is quite nice, because you'll know anyone who's used these will know these toggles are quite fussy and quite fiddly. When you're in full gear with a mask on, getting them done up and undone can be a real nuisance, really annoying. And I actually find that this Velcro flap is enough to keep the glove on, and because the glove's light, it doesn't want to fly off the end of your hand, because it sits quite tightly and is quite tight to the hand and quite light, so it doesn't really have a lot of momentum in itself. So so far, and I haven't used these in combat, although I have stood there and been hit repeatedly by my wife, for training purposes of course, not just a normal day. So far they seem absolutely fantastic. You can feel the hits, but they certainly do their job of dispersing the force. And as far as I'm concerned, as those of you who have been watching my channel for a while will know about my experience with broken fingers, the fingers to me are the most important part, and so far it looks like the fingers and knuckles and thumb on this are absolutely spectacular. I think with future generations and evolutions of it, maybe they want to look at a different type of cuff or a different type of wrist protection. I've never been a big fan of the lacrosse type wrist protection. It works fantastically, but I think it's bulkier than it needs to be, and occasionally we see weapons slide underneath it, which can be a bit annoying. But you know, these are with a club discount from the HEMA Shop, and obviously I'll put the link below. With a club discount, these are £45, and that's like, you can't compete, nobody else can compete with that at the moment. These are, in my opinion, for under £100, without any question, and I don't think anybody could question it, these are the only HEMA gloves worth getting, and very clearly the best HEMA gloves worth getting now. And I would go as far as to say these are better than most of the £100 plus gloves that I have seen. There are people in my club who have the Arsensis gloves and the Spez gloves, although I'm not. The Spez gloves are fantastic, but I'm not personally a big fan of mittens, and they don't work for sabre really. The Arsensis gloves seem to fall apart. There's the Comfort fencing gloves, which are a bit like aluminium gauntlets, which I really dislike. They're too heavy, they're too clanky, they've got too many openings, and the service is awful. So as far as I'm concerned, even if you had £100 to spend, these are still the best gloves to get. Certainly for sabre. For longsword, I think probably the Spez gloves are more protective, but obviously they're in a completely different price range and you have to wait a long time for them. These are ready to buy now from the HEMA Shop, straight off the shelf, and fantastic price. Buy a pair, you won't regret it. Cheers.